This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GMC Podcasting Network. I am your host, Josh Strickland, and it is Tuesday. A tornado went through my town last night. Just a quick story. A tornado came through. I live in South Carolina, and a tornado came through. Luckily, nothing of mine got bad. That was a bit terrible thing to say. None of my apartment wasn't affected. My car wasn't affected, any of that. The only thing around me were like debris, but literally like a couple miles down the road, it is just utter devastation. And it's crazy how I was that close to being kind of included in that. But I got woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning by the alert. I went straight to the bathroom, kind of took a nap in the bathroom until like 4:30, and then the tornado warning was not in effect anymore by that point. So I was just like, okay, cool. And then I went back to bed. So I didn't really understand the gravity of it until I woke up in the morning and saw the news, and it was crazy. But that's my personal life. You're not here to listen to that. I mean, or are you? I don't know. There's no sports. But we do have things to talk about today. Here are our topics. We're going to talk about the NFL's concerns with a virtual NFL draft. We're going to talk about Trump and his meeting with sports leaders. How did that go? Did it affect anything? We'll talk about Christian McCaffrey getting an extension. That's a brand new one. The Bulls getting a new general manager. And then, of course, we'll top it all off with movies 39 through 30 in the Athletics top 100 sports movies. But we're going to talk we're going to start off with a story that's very close to my heart, and as you've all probably known if you've been listening ever since I took over these shows, the XFL is gone. Somehow. The XFL, unfortunately, they shut down this over the weekend, like Friday, I think, or earlier than that. They shut down last week. They shut down sometime last week, and it was, at first I thought they were just saying, oh, we're just going to suspend everything and until, so originally they were like, we're suspending the season because we can't play games. And then it turned into, we're not paying our employees anymore. And then they filed for bankruptcy. And they filed for bankruptcy Monday. So it's very confusing to me because I remember when the XFL was first happening and you had the whole thing with the AAF, the Alliance of American Football, last year where they didn't have enough money to continue functioning as a league. Halfway through the season, they were out of money and players had to buy their own hospital bills. They had to pay for their own hospital bills. They had to buy their own flights home and buy their own hotel rooms and stuff like that. I mean, that was just a poorly run organization. The XFL, however, was a pretty well-run organization from what I can tell. You didn't hear anything about money issues during when they were playing. You didn't hear about players not getting paid because the AAF, they had like a 2-week period before they officially shut down where players were literally not getting paid for playing the games. The XFL didn't have any of those problems. So that's why it was such a shock to me to see that they ran into those problems. So they laid off nearly all of their staff on Friday. This happened Friday morning. They suspended operations without concluding its inaugural season due to the coronavirus pandemic. And when the XFL started, I remember them saying that they had enough money to do at least 3 seasons. So I'm trying to figure out what happened to that money. Either that was just a projection based off of attendance and money from merchandise and stuff like that, and none of that's really happening because of the coronavirus and the COVID-19 and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if their projections were just thrown all out of whack because of this. But Jeffrey Pollack, the league's president and chief operating officer, said on a conference call to XFL employees, the decision has been made to immediately suspend day-to-day operations of the XFL in Stamford and each of their 8 markets. The XFL as an entity has been hard hit and is affected more directly than most of the sports industry. We had no alternative but to stop right in the middle of our first season, just as we were continuing to build our foundation and our future. He clarified that the suspension of operations included the termination of employment and all on the call. What this means is that everyone's employment by the XFL is terminated, effective today. This has all happened very quickly, and I know it's painful to hear. Rest assured, this has nothing to do with your performance or what was achieved. This is about a global circumstance that none of us created. While it is my unimaginable task to deliver this message to you today, it has also been my absolute pleasure and honor to work with it and know all of you. Stuff like that. So, a handful of XFL executives are still employed. They have a small skeleton staff in Stamford where the headquarters are. Employees will continue getting salaries through April 12th, which it is April 13th when I'm recording this. So that happened, that they already got that. So it's just very strange, and it just overall sucks because the XFL was getting momentum. I remember seeing people on Twitter, they were actually very excited. The Beer Snake in DC for the Defenders games, everybody was very excited. Everybody thought it was funny and stuff like that. Some of the teams were legitimately fun to watch. The Roughnecks were really fun to watch. The Battlehawks, they had a really good run game. They were fun to watch. I mean, even the Tampa Bay Vipers, which were easily the worst team in the league, but they had an exciting offense and they kept games somewhat close most of the time. The play is obviously not going to be on par with the NFL, but I think it was as close to the NFL as you can get as a other separate professional football league. And it was really fun to speculate as can they get this college player to come out of college and play for the XFL and stuff like that. I mean, all that stuff was really fun to think about, and we were all thinking about next season, what we're going to do next season. And now, XFL players, the cream of the crop, they pretty much moved on. PJ Walker, he moved on to the Carolina Panthers. Then Tamu went to the Kansas City Chiefs, and amongst a bunch of other players also went to NFL teams, which it sucks seeing them go to other NFL teams and signing with these teams, mostly because if the XFL continued and the XFL finished the season, they would have gained a lot more legitimacy because the players that played in the XFL actually made the jump to play in the NFL. So there's that, and I just really enjoyed watching it. It was nice having football on in the spring. I mean, of course, right now we're all a little loopy because we all just want any kind of semblance of sports. People are watching people play video games. People are watching old 20-year-old stuff. It's we're starving for it. So of course the XFL, but the XFL, they had good enough football where it was entertaining. They had good enough football where you could stay engaged in it for a long period of time. And it's just very sad to see him go. I am very sad. I'm disappointed that I see a lot of people on Twitter. They seem happy that the XFL is gone, which I don't fully understand that because, why are you happy about more people getting a opportunity to fulfill their dreams? Why are you happy? If you consider yourself a football fan, why are you happy that you're losing more football? And it was just fun to watch. And why are you being a jerk to people who enjoyed it? That's another thing. That's just part of my overall mantra, which is just don't be a jerk. There's no point of being a jerk. But the XFL, they did have impressive television numbers. At least their debut was pretty impressive. They kept it a little. Games had decent attendance. The broadcast had decent viewership. Everything was literally going up, and it just kept going up. The play got a little better. The teams got more interesting as we saw them more and more. We got more used to the players, the stars of each and every team, and we were getting used to the Bud Light celebrations or the Bud Seltzer celebrations. We're getting used to the Beer Snake. We're getting used to all of this crazy things. We were getting used to the St. Louis Battlehawks saying caca or the caca's law or some stupid crap like that. We were getting used to that. We were starting to love it. But, alas, it is all over, which is very unfortunate. They said they may have no plans of coming back in 2021. I'm assuming they're not going to have plans to come back ever. Well, I won't say ever because people probably said that about 2001. But the XFL is unfortunately gone. When we come back, we'll talk about a football league that is still here, still planning on playing in the fall. That is the NFL, and we'll talk about the virtual NFL draft when we return.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So in this strange time, we have to do a virtual NFL draft. After about a month and a half of wondering what the NFL is going to do with the draft, it went from this extravagant Las Vegas showcase to show Las Vegas that the NFL is serious about the Las Vegas Raiders and serious about getting the NFL popular in Las Vegas. They're going to have a weird stage. They're going to have boats bringing draftees to the stage or something like that. I remember reading about that. That seems so long ago. But the NFL was ready to go all out. Then, of course, COVID-19 happened. The NFL shut down, and then the NFL was just like, okay, maybe we'll cut it down. We'll still have the draftees come in. We'll still have the players come in. We'll just do a regular draft, basically. Then it got worse. Then they're like, okay, we won't do a crowd. We'll just do it in a studio. We'll still have the draftees there. Blah 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 blah. Then it got even worse. So now we are doing a virtual NFL draft. Now, of course, there's a lot of speculation and confusion over what a virtual NFL draft will look like because it's never happened before. This is the first ever virtual NFL draft. And a lot of people have been making funny memes about it, saying it's just going to be a fantasy football draft, a really official fantasy football draft. But there are legitimately concerns. Some coaches are afraid of hacking, other teams hacking them and putting in the wrong draft picks. Some teams are worried about internet connections and stuff like that, and technical problems just in general. So would we have to increase the time for the draft? How is the television broadcast going to work? All of these questions, and nobody really has a very good answer because this has never been done before. We don't really know how we're going to do this. I don't think the NFL fully understands how they're going to do this, but they have another 9 days to figure it out. It's on April 23rd. It's next Thursday. The NFL's going to have to figure something out. So there are concerns. So the NFL is moving forward with their 2020 draft on April 23rd in a completely virtual format. Going digital has raised some concerns around the league about the draft, though. In a memo to NFL teams and staff, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell wrote the league's understanding is that many clubs are already well advanced in preparing for a virtual draft, and we are confident that all clubs can take the necessary steps to make the 2020 draft a successful event. Now, I would hope that these billion-dollar organizations can do a virtual draft. Me and my friends can do a virtual draft. It's not hard. Madden can do a virtual draft. It's not hard to do a virtual draft. But tech troubles is one of the main issues. The NFL has been working to test internet connections and install various safeguards to make sure there aren't any technical problems that cause hiccups. ESPN reported that the league will hold multiple tests of the system prior to the start of the draft. In the case of an internet connection loss or another problem, the NFL will also be hosting a conference call with all 32 teams during the draft that will be landline only, where teams could still announce their pick on there. The NFL is not considering adding additional time for teams to make picks, so that answers that question, whether or not we should add more time. I personally believe they should still add at least a little bit of time, but, that's whatever. So, in an interview with the Baltimore Sun, Ravens head coach John Harbaugh said that security is a concern. Every time I read something in like the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times that talks about how messed up Zoom is or some of these other deals, I immediately text it to our IT people and Director of Football Administration, Nick Mattios, one of those guys, and they assure me that we're doing everything humanly possible, he said. So he's referring to Zoom. Zoom has had a lot of privacy issues that have come out in the recent weeks. I know every business and every school is now using Zoom at the wazoo, but it is not completely secure as everybody thought it was. So there are issues about that. And of course, NFL coaches, who are some of the most paranoid people on the planet, are going to be worried about hacking. They're going to be worried about people getting into the Zoom call or stealing info and stuff like that. So they're going to be worried about that because they are the most paranoid people in America, in the world. The only people more paranoid are probably world leaders. But world leaders have a better reason for being paranoid. Anyways, the Rams COO Kevin Demoff told NBC Sports that he had similar concerns about potential risk around sensitive information. He says, "How do you make sure your conversations are protected?" He told NBC Sports, "Someone could hack into the Zoom, and you're probably not going to learn a lot. Hacking into a team's draft room on Zoom, it's probably a lot different. That would be my biggest concern just from an encryption standpoint of how do you have these conversations confidentially." So he's worried about, like I've been mentioning before, he's worried about them having like a war room Zoom, having a Zoom of just all the war room people, and then someone hacking into that and stealing info and figuring out what they're going to draft and stuff like that. Hopefully the NFL has answers for these. I'm not really, I'm a tech guy, but I'm not that techie. I don't know servers. I don't know encryption and stuff like that. But according to ESPN, some coaches and front office members are even concerned about having IT employees in their homes to prepare their offices for the technology needed for the draft, given concerns around the potential of spreading the coronavirus. So they're worried about having IT employees come in and setting all this up for them because they're worried that the IT people might spread COVID-19 to them, which, I guess that's a valid thing. But do you just not want to draft? Like, how does that all work? While there are some concerns around that draft yet to be ironed out, the NFL will use the event to help charities dealing with coronavirus on the front lines, which is great. NFL is really good at doing stuff like that. They'll be holding a draft-a-thon alongside the draft on April 23rd to 25th, raising money for nonprofits selected by the NFL Foundation, which include the American Red Cross, CDC Foundations, All of Us, the Salvation Army, and the United Way's COVID-19 Community Response and Recovery Fund, among others. Goodell said in a statement, conducting this event virtually and taking all necessary precautions while doing so underscores the importance of staying home and staying strong during this unprecedented moment in our history. So let's recap all this. Coaches are the most paranoid people in the world, so they're going to complain about an NFL draft no matter what, unless they have a secure room to make their decisions. The NFL says they are technologically capable of holding a virtual draft and it going without hitches. They're doing tests throughout. They're doing tests right now, probably. They're doing tests throughout this entire week leading up to the NFL draft. And it's just going to be very strange. I saw that Roger Goodell is going to be doing it from his basement. Like, he's going to be announcing the picks from his basement in Brooklyn. and weird things like that. It's going to be a very strange, very, very strange NFL draft. And I'm not really sure if you can watch it on TV. I still have no idea if it's going to be on TV or not. I mean, I'm assuming since he's going to be broadcasting it from his basement that you're going to have someone filming it, I guess. I mean, why would you do it in your basement when that's not an issue? It's going to be very strange. It's going to be very interesting. And this whole year is just going to be a very interesting thing to look back on years from now. Like 30 years from now, everybody's going to be talking about this year still. 2050, people are still going to be talking about 2020. And it's going to be very strange to look back on all of this. Like there's going to be asterisks on all the history books. 2020 NFL draft, asterisks. 2019-20 basketball season, asterisks. It's just, we live in a strange time. We have to do strange things to try to keep the status quo going, because you can't not have an NFL draft, because you have a lot of guys who don't have any eligibility left in the NCAA. And even if you do cancel the draft, do those guys who do have eligibility, are they allowed to come back to their colleges? What does that mean for those colleges and stuff like that? And if they're not allowed to come back, what are they going to do for that whole year? Just train, I suppose. But then the next draft, you're going to have to like double it in size, because you're going to have 2 separate draft classes. It's going to be strange. I mean, they have to have the draft. I'm just saying, because they still fully expect to play the NFL season at this moment in time. So we'll see how it works out. It's just strange, man. It's just super strange. And once again, I don't know if it's going to be on TV or not. But when we return, we'll talk about a man who's on TV all the time. We'll talk about Donald Trump as he spoke with sports leaders, what happened in that meeting, what could possibly come out of it when we return.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Think about being so powerful that you can command every single commissioner of every single sport and Vince McMahon into a conference call and just talk to them and pretty much try to force them to do something. Just imagine how much power that is, and that's how much power we're talking about with the President of the United States. This is going to be purely apolitical. I'm not going to go into politics or anything like that, because this is a sports show. We're going to talk about the sports aspect of this story, which is the President of the United States met with sports leaders discussing when they're going to return to playing sports, which is an outrageous headline already, but everything we've been talking about so far with the XFL leaving and the NFL draft being virtual, everything we've talked about so far is outrageous. And I mean, we're going to continue. Well, actually, no, the rest of the topics in the show are not outrageous. They're normal topics, but it is just strange that the most powerful man in the world, debatably, depending on how you feel about the country right now, but the most powerful figure in the entire world decided to call up all these sports commissioners and see what's going on, you know? So, of course, the sports commissioners on the call included NHL's Gary Bettman, WNBA's Kathy Engelbert, MLS's Don Garber, NFL's Roger Goodell, MLB's Rod Manfred, Vince McMahon, president of the WWE, PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan, NBA's Adam Silver, UFC's Dana White, IndyCar's Roger Penske, and LPGA's Michael Wan, Drew Fleming, the president of the Breeders' Cup. These all, President Donald Trump corralled all these people's busy lives, because they're still busy. I guarantee you they're still busy, especially now when they're trying to figure out when we do come back, what are we going to do? He gathers these people, gets them into a conference call. So he held a conference call with leaders of 12 American sports leagues on Saturday, said he was optimistic the NFL could start its season on time and that fans could be back into stadiums and arenas by August or September. So I've talked about this before. In my opinion, it's not looking likely that we're going to start in August or September. But it's also my opinion that it's a little too early to really make a call on it. I think we need to wait until June or July to make an official call on whether football, the NFL, or whether college football will all come back. But I think it's looking unlikely. But I also think it's too early to just call it off. But President Trump went on to say, I want fans back whenever we're ready, as soon as we can. I can't tell you a date, but I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. We're going to see where we are. August would be great, and the fans want to be back too, which that's not wrong. The fans do want to be back. Fans, man, if we needed sports at any time, this is the time, and we can't have sports, and that's what makes this completely frustrating. Like, I visit my parents every weekend. I stay with my parents every weekend because I have to drive to Greenville. I have a job in Greenville over the weekend. That's where I record the Sunday shows. That's where I was supposed to record this show, but I got lazy and didn't do it until Monday. That's besides the point. So I visit my parents. My dad is super into sports. All he does is watch sports. He literally doesn't watch anything. I mean, he watches a couple like Netflix shows, but he watches sports all the time. He is struggling hard. He is struggling so hard right now with everything. He was watching the NBA 2K thing, which I know I talked about on the Sunday episode, but that's bad. It's not interesting at all. That NBA 2K thing, not interesting at all. But so my dad's struggling. He's watching like NCIS stuff like that because he's looking for anything to watch to just pass the time, especially since he's a teacher, so he doesn't have. I mean, he has to do remote learning, but he gets most of that done by the time I come around. So it is just a struggle for him. So I agree, fans do want to be back, but you got to remember that there is a certain point where we have to remember that there are concerns with coming back, especially if we come back too early, if we come back too strong, like we can come back and play with no fans, or we can go in and just pack 100,000 people in a stadium after we practice social distancing for a couple months. One of those things doesn't make sense. In my opinion, both of those things don't really make sense, but one of those things makes the least sense. But anyways, Trump suggested that leagues lobby together to reinstate the Entertainment Expense Act deduction, which was eliminated with the tax overhaul legislation of 2017. So this rule allowed for individuals to deduct entertainment expenses such as ticket costs, concession spending, which Trump said will incentivize people to get back out to stadiums and other public venues. So this brings back the whole stadium thing. Once again, do you really, and I'm asking you as the listener, personally, after all of this is done, whether you agree with social distancing or not, there is definitely a stigma around it. When it's all said and done, and you get told you can go to a sports stadium, how long is it really going to take you to actually go to a sporting event? Now, if this stops before football, it's going to be tough to kind of get me away from football because I love the atmosphere of football and stuff like that. But I'm not going to lie to you. After this whole social distancing thing, it's going to be tough for me to guarantee that I'll go to a stadium that's filled with 85,000 other people that you don't know if they social distance, that you don't know anything about the people they've interacted with and stuff like that. There's just too many people that can happen there. But Trump really wants people to be back in these public venues, and I think it's not a good idea, especially now. I personally think we're not going to have any crowds until at least next fall, which is going to suck. I agree. It's going to make sports lame, because one of the great things about sports is crowd reactions and the crowd in general. Most players play for the crowds. I mean, LeBron once said, way back when the NBA was considering going without crowds, he said, "No, I play for the fans. Why would I do this without fans?" But we might have to do that because it's going to be very hard for most people. Like, ticket sales and attendance are going to go way down if we do have fans in the stands. Because most people are going to struggle to kind of warrant that. Most people are going to struggle with that fact. It's like, we just social distance for so long. There's still a bunch of cases probably. I just don't know if I can go to a stadium packed to the gills. Have you ever been to a college football stadium? It's bleachers. It's not like seats, individual seats. You are sandwiched between two other people, whether you like it or not. And you are packed in there like sardines, especially for big-time games. And it's just going to be strange. It's going to be weird as hell. Anyways, prior to the tax overhaul, employers could deduct 50% of the cost of entertainment-related meals, 50% of the face value of a ticket, and 100% of meals provided to workers for the employer's convenience. So, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, one of the attendees on the call, said that although sports were the first public ventures to be shut down, they are also interested in being the first to reopen once they receive the all-clear from public health officials, which that's the smart thing to do. Wait for public health officials. Once again, don't know if I can sit in the crowd that soon, but anyways, others were not as optimistic as the president about the NFL returning to the field by then. California Governor Gavin Newsom said, "I'm not anticipating that happening in the state," which would make things very weird if the Rams, the 49ers can't play. Oh, and the Chargers. I always forget about the Chargers. If they can't play home games at all. And then of course, you have the construction of that new stadium that they have. Oh, man, hiccups. Which, according to the LA Times, completion by the start of the season is not guaranteed, according to the Rams' chief operating officer, because they are probably following social distancing guidelines and stuff like that, especially in California. California's a lot more strict about all of it. The stadium might not even be done. So the president opened the call by thanking the sports leagues for the work being done by many teams and players to care for their communities, workforces, and fan bases. And according to the White House pool report, the commissioners thanked Trump for his leadership and interest in sports, and he encouraged them to continue their support for citizens. So there's the call. Trump wants sports back as soon as possible, probably because it's a very good distraction for people, especially in tough times. I mean, think of all the worst times in the past 100 years. It is usually sports kind of help people heal. After 9/11, you had the New York Yankees. You had the New York Yankees playing well, making the World Series and stuff like that. And you had George W. Bush throwing out that first pitch. And, the healing process kind of started after that. Anytime there's a huge disaster, people gather around the sports team. New Orleans, after Katrina, the dome coming. First game in the Superdome after Hurricane Katrina. It still gives me goosebumps every time I watch that. I mean, sports are very important to the social psyche and helping people begin to heal. So I do agree on that, but we still need to be safe about it. When we return, Christian McCaffrey of the Carolina Panthers, he got paid. And we'll discuss that when we come back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
One of the biggest new stars in the league besides Patrick Mahomes is Christian McCaffrey. He got drafted by the Carolina Panthers a couple seasons ago, and he has been an amazing playmaker, even though even though the Panthers haven't been the best with him. And I mean, most of that is because Cam Newton's been injured. I don't really know how many games Cam Newton's has actually played with Christian McCaffrey. I think they had a full season, maybe. I'm not 100% positive on that one. But, or they had at least half a season last year. But Christian McCaffrey, he has been the biggest proponent of that Panthers offense, because the Panthers, I mean, they have a good receiving core now, but the Panthers, before Christian McCaffrey, had a kind of an issue with running backs. They never really had top-tier running backs. They had Jonathan Stewart way back when, paid him way too much money, and then he was out of his prime very shortly after. And then you had Tolbert, which everyone loves Tolbert, but he's not, an everyday back, every down back or something like that. Christian McCaffrey came along, and he completely changed the whole makeup of this offense, because he's so versatile. So he can do anything. He can run between the tackles. He can also go out for a pass, and he's just so dynamic when he is on the field. And so he got a 4-year extension from the Panthers. The Panthers rewarded him with a 4-year extension. This happened a couple hours ago before I recorded this. They offered him a 4-year extension worth $16 million per season. This was reported by Adam Schefter, and this makes McCaffrey the highest paid running back in NFL history. So let's think about that real quick. Highest paid NFL running back in history. So this comes at a very weird time, because teams are really not paying running backs anymore, because running backs, they kind of start breaking down after a certain amount. Best example I can give you is Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley had a fantastic year, helped the Rams lead to the Super Bowl. Then right after that, he had a subpar season, got cut. Now he's on the Falcons. Also, I mean, it has happened a lot. I mean, remember Jamal Charles? Like, what happened to him? Their running backs are a hot commodity, but also not a hot commodity, because, I mean, they're kind of a dime a dozen now. Most teams have schemed around the fact, they spread the ball out more, they pass the ball more. They've kind of schemed out the fact that you can just plug in any running back. Now, of course, you can't just plug in every running back. You need someone who's at least decent to kind of help out there. But running backs are not big time anymore. They're not like Bo Jackson. They're not like Herschel Walker, who are going to get these huge deals. So a lot of people are kind of wondering why they're the Panthers paying Christian McCaffrey this much money. Why are you paying a running back this much money? Well, let me give you a couple of stats. This is just a couple stats from last year. Christian McCaffrey, 23 years old, by the way. He's only 23. Christian McCaffrey ran for 1,387 yards last season. He also caught 116 passes for 1,005 yards, becoming the third player in NFL history to rush and receive for 1,000 yards in the same season. He also accounted for 19 touchdowns and was selected to the Pro Bowl and a first-team All-Pro in his third season in the league. And this is with no Cam Newton. This is with Kyle Allen, which is not the best, quarterback to have in your arsenal. But he's getting paid this much money because he's not only just a running back. He is also a receiver. He is a big-time playmaker for the Carolina Panthers. And obviously, Matt Rule's talked about him at length, about how great he is and stuff like that. So I understand why people are worried about him, worried about this deal. But you got to remember, he's the number 8 overall draft pick in 2017. He got 1,000 yards, 1,000 season, which, like I said, is the third time ever. So he's not going to get a basic running back deal, because even if his capabilities of being an in-between tackles running back, you can actually switch him to slot receiver. And he will do great at slot receiver as well. But Panthers, they have a brand new coaching staff, and they believe Christian McCaffrey is going to be a huge piece to how that team's going to be run. Rule said we want to be a serious football place. We want to be a place that's all about the game, and I think that's who Christian McCaffrey is. That's what Matt Rule said about Christian McCaffrey. So there are many reasons why this deal happened. New head coach wanted to avoid a holdout running back holdouts have been a thing for the past couple years with Ezekiel Elliott. Then you had Melvin Gordon, stuff like that. So Rule didn't want a holdout, especially amongst this unprecedented global situation that we have right now. The Panthers also signed a core leader. And you got to remember this. The Panthers lost a lot of leadership in the past 2 years. You lost Luke Kuechly. You lost Greg Olsen, Ryan Khalil, Thomas Davis, Julius Peppers, and Cam Newton. All of these players, whether you think they're good or not, it doesn't matter. They had a leadership role within that locker room, and they built a atmosphere and a culture there. And now that culture is completely wiped because now Ron Rivera is gone. You have a new coach, and all of those players are gone, which is insane. All of those players are gone. So I can't even think off the top of my head who the leader in that locker room is. So maybe signing Christian McCaffrey to this extension will help out, figure out a leadership, or at least have a leadership role and be a core member of the team for the future when they're when they're trying to build a team that is successful and try to win a Super Bowl. So Carolina also extended linebacker Shaq Thompson to kind of do the same thing, but on the defense. So, I mean, Chris McCaffrey has started Fund for Healthcare Workers in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. He's done great stuff for Charlotte and his hometown of Denver. So they were able to do a little damage control here. Olsen and Newton were concerned. The Panthers don't take care of their veteran or core players, so this kind of snaps that a little bit. And with McCaffrey's snap count and corresponding workload, because it feels like McCaffrey, if you watch a Panthers game, legitimately, it feels like Christian McCaffrey plays every down. Feels like it. He plays every snap, on offense at least, because he can play in so many different positions that it just feels like he is. Like, if he's not on the field, then I remember watching last year, if Christian McCaffrey wasn't on the field, I knew nothing was going to happen. So he was a main proponent for that. And once again, they didn't just extend a running back. They extended a guy who can play. He was the number one receiver by target number. He had the most targets on that team. So this is not a completely weird extension. Some people say it's too much money, which, if you look at it from a running back's perspective, yes, it's too much money. But if you look at it from his overall body of work, where he's the number one receiver when it comes to targets, he's got 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving, which has never been done before. I mean, it's been done like 2 other times before. But this extension also means that we have a clearer picture of what the Panthers are planning on doing with their timeline in which they expect to win sustainably. The 4-year deal technically begins after the final 2 seasons of his rookie deal, which includes a 5th-year option, and that means the new money, the $64 million, could be backloaded with some cash bonuses on the front end, which means, of course, that Carolina has him for cheap for at least 1 more year. That space the team will need in earnest because it has so many holes to patch over the next 2 off seasons. This money can be split up, restructured, converted to bonuses, etc. at any time. So a deal like this shows that the Panthers expect to be rebuilt and ready to win at the base of that 4-year extension, because they will have used current and 2021 capital to build elsewhere in the meantime without all the cash being tied up into Christian McCaffrey. So Christian McCaffrey is going to get seriously paid in 2022, and that is when we logically can expect the Panthers to be ready to actually contend, which we're still not 100% sure if the Panthers are competing or not, or tanking or not, or rebuilding or not. We have no idea what the Panthers are doing, honestly, but it seems like they're probably going to rebuild. So we'll see. We'll see if everything goes according to plan. When we return, we'll talk about the Bulls, the Chicago Bulls. They got a new GM. We'll talk about him when we come back.
Are you looking to get your college football fixed? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
You want to hear something sad? Wednesday, tomorrow, would have been the final day of the NBA's regular season. We would be going into the playoffs here in a little bit. We would be talking about playoff talk and seedings and stuff like that. We'll be discussing either the Grizzlies versus the Lakers or Zion versus LeBron and the Lakers and stuff like that. But unfortunately, we are not. Unfortunately, we are talking about the new lead man for the Chicago Bulls. And, I mean, good for the Bulls. It seems like everybody's pretty happy with this signing, I guess. Arturas Karnivasovas, which I have no idea if I actually said that right. But under normal circumstances, off-the-court business would just be starting for the lottery-bound Bulls. But their long-awaited front office restructure is rapidly taking shape. They had a coaching change as well as an actual search. A coaching change as well as an actual search might not be far behind, and who knows what could come next. It's only been 2 days since Arturas Karnivasovas agreed to become the Bulls' new executive vice president of basketball operations, replacing John Paxson, who was there for 17 years. As of Friday night, the Bulls still had not announced him as their chief executive. But in the 2 days since agreeing to leave his post with the Denver Nuggets as the Denver Nuggets GM, Karnivasovas already was busy filling out his staff. So, multiple news outlets reported Friday that New Orleans Pelicans Executive Director of Basketball Administration J.J. Polk is expected to join him as the assistant general manager, while Nuggets Director of Player Personnel Pat Connolly, brother of Denver President of Basketball Operations Tim Connolly, and former assistant GM for the Phoenix Suns, is also in play for a front office position with the Chicago Bulls. Adrian Wojnarowski, God, I can't say names right now, also reported Friday that Karnivasovas' initial targets for the Bulls GM job include Denver assistant GM Calvin Booth, the LA Clippers GM Mark Hughes, Orlando assistant GM and former Bulls front office staffer Matt Lloyd, and Philadelphia vice president of player personnel Mark Eversley. So he's acting fast and hiring purposely, appearing to stand by previous statements that he's made about his vision for team building. So he told Chris Mannix on a podcast, inclusivity for me is a huge thing. Hiring intelligent, passionate people, being fair with people, and put them in a position to do their jobs and not to micromanage them, which I don't know about any of y'all. I hate being micromanaged. Being micromanaged is the worst thing that could ever happen. I hate being micromanaged. It's terrible. I like doing my own thing. I like having guidance and being led, but I don't like micromanaging. Anyways, all indications are that he has pegged two good people. Polk, who had been with the Pelicans for 9 seasons, is regarded as a salary cap expert who was instrumental in New Orleans contract negotiations. Pelicans Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations David Griffin voluntarily lauded Polk on a Thursday conference call with New Orleans area reporters. Griffin said, "Our cap guys, Shane Kupperman and J.J. Polk, have been doing a great job getting us ready for what free agency will look like. In many ways, nothing has changed. It's just in terms of the here and now, you have to be far more creative." So he's getting high praise from his former bosses, which is always a good thing. Connolly comes from a scouting background, and although he doesn't carry Karnivasovas' international cachet, the two share some of the same DNA. Connolly discussed his comprehensive approach to scouting under former Suns GM Ryan McDonough. Anyways, with Suns.com prior to the 2014-2015 season. Connolly once said that just to have as good a feel and most information possible about who's out there, Ryan's big thing is the global vision of not just knowing college guys and just being kind of tunnel vision on that, but knowing a guy that plays in college, maybe a guy in the G League that you can compare him to, and who's he like in Europe. Having a great kind of global scale, it means a lot of work, but it is pretty interesting to see everybody's different view on guys. So Karnisovas isn't just moving at a dizzying pace, he's inciting optimism, which is always a good thing. Optimism. Widespread fan discontentment meant the successors to Paxton and general manager Gar Forman always were going to receive a hero's welcome. Karnisovas has been viewed as nothing short of a home run hire by Bulls president and COO Michael Reinsdorf. And judging by the immediate reaction to Polk and Connolly, you would think the Bulls signed actual players. The reality is even Karnisovas, handpicked general manager, will be no higher than fourth on the totem pole. Polk and Connolly, two names few outside of rival front offices knew before Friday, figured to slide right back into the background upon arrival. But these are the men who will be tasked with bringing winning basketball back to Chicago. And after nearly 2 decades of the Bulls being under the same direction, Karnisovas and crew represent the new blood of the franchise. The new blood that the franchise probably sorely needs. The whole league is praising the Bulls for luring smart people as they attempt to modernize their front office. Karnisovas is winning the virtual press conference, even as circumstances might prohibit him from ever having a real one, which is unfortunate for him, but happens. This process hasn't been without hiccups, of course. There were roadblocks at the start of the search for a new chief executive, as well as backlash for the Bulls initially appearing to lack inclusivity in their interview process. Already the Bulls have been vindicated on both counts. They've plucked a potential rising star in Karnisovas. I had his name correct this entire time. I messed it up on the last time. Not the last time, but I messed it up. Giving him the power to flesh out his staff, and he quickly made Polk, an African-American, his first hire. But there is suddenly reason to be excited again about what the future may hold. Karnisovas can steer the Bulls any number of directions. For now, the unknown intrigues everyone. So, everyone's excited. Chicago is understandably excited. They're excited for change. You see that in a lot of these teams that kind of struggle. You see change here, but you can't get past what Paxton did. He made bold trades, he acquired cohesive talent, and generally went about bringing back pride to the team he won championships with. Reporters loved him before. Reporters who loved him before found him to be honest and engaging. He had the long shadow of the Michael Jordan years when he was trying to rebuild the Bulls in his own identity, and with the greatness of those championship years as the bar to reach. In the end, Paxton just couldn't get there. So how do you grade 17 years of which Paxton was either the GM or the executive vice president of basketball operations? Well, every so often you hear or read fans complaining that the Bulls haven't mattered since Jordan's final shot over Byron Russell in 1998. But that's silly. You had Derrick Rose, you had Tom Thibodeau. They had a great success. They were the number 1 seed in the East a couple times. I mean, Derrick Rose won MVP. Paxton is still staying with the team as a senior advisor of basketball operations. So Karnisovas is taking over the vice president of basketball operations, but Paxton is still on as the senior advisor. Gar Forman was fired as GM. Chairman Jerry Reinsdorf wrote that Forman will always be part of the Bulls family, won't be a part of the basketball operations department anymore. But Forman took a lot of heat, but this was always Paxton's team. So the Bulls, they're getting a little change up here. So when we do have NBA get back, we'll get to see how the Bulls deal with that roster, what they do, because I can't name a single person on their roster, to be honest. I don't really care for the Bulls. I haven't heard about the Bulls in a while. So, this is probably a good thing to happen for them. It sounds like a knockout hire. I don't really know much about NBA executives, so I don't really have much to say about this subject, but it looks like it is going to be a good fit. Chicago Bulls fans are welcoming him with open arms, stuff like that. So, looks like it's going to work for the Chicago Bulls, which is good for them. I don't really care for the Bulls, but I do like them. I like when they're good. I mean, Michael Jordan is to blame for that. And I mean, I could do the cliche thing and say the NBA is better when the Bulls are good. I mean, everyone says that about every team, I feel like. So I'm not going to say that here, but it's always good to have even more parity in the NBA. Because why not? Why not? Just why not? Why not? When we return, we'll do 39 movies, 39 through 30 here on the Athletics Top 100 Sports Movies. We are heading towards the end of this list, blazing fast. I think Sunday is going to be the last 10. Let me think about that real quick. Yeah, next Tuesday is going to be the last 10. So get ready for that, and I have to think of a new segment to do every week. Oh, God. All right, when we return.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, folks, here we go. 39 through 30. Now, 49 through 40, I didn't know a lot of the movies. I never even heard of most of the movies. So hopefully this time it's a little bit better, but I mean, no promises, to be honest. But we're heading towards the end of this list, which means I have to start thinking of different things to do at the end of each show. But I just want to quickly remind everybody, if you like this show, please like, rate, and subscribe it to wherever you get your podcasts. I mean, it could be iTunes, it could be Spotify, it could even be like random podcast app. I mean, I use Pocket Cast. I like Pocket Cast a lot better than most other podcasting apps. I'm not really a big fan of Spotify podcasts. But anyways, let's start it off. Number 39, Searching for Bobby Fischer, 1993, average rating of 81.65. So the film is set in a brutally competitive world of tournament chess and explores the quandary for parents who discover their child is exceptionally talented. How best to maximize the gift? How are you living vicariously through them? If they're simply not consumed with winning despite high capabilities, is that wasted potential? Are you quite frankly screwing up your kid? Even without the Little League, this might be the greatest film ever made about Little League parents. So, starting off bad, man. I've never heard of this one. It's a chess movie, though. I think I might have seen a couple little bits of this. Not 100% positive on that one, though. I might have seen like a couple scenes from this, but it has Lawrence Fishburne in it. It's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, so that's good enough for you. I mean, it's won awards from the American Society of Cinematographers. So it's apparently a fantastic chess movie. But moving on to 38, Fighting with My Family, 2019, average rating of 81.82. So this is based on the true story of WWE wrestler Paige. The plot has its share of cliches, but a strong supporting cast, including Lena Headey, Nick Frost, and Vince Vaughn, makes it shine. Every character brings something to the table. A fun film about dreams and family. So I'm actually very surprised to see this on this list at all. I have not seen this movie. I have no desire. I had no desire. I knew this movie was a thing. I had no desire to see this movie, because why would I watch a random movie about Paige, the wrestler? Now, if you don't know anything about Paige, she was a women's wrestler for the WWE. She's been wrestling since she was 13 years old, which that's what this movie gets into. She starts wrestling with 13-year-olds. She's a wrestling family and stuff like that. So that's what this movie is mostly about. I thought it would be bad, because most movies, because it was produced by WWE, most movies produced by WWE are not very good. So I'm actually very shocked to see this movie on this list. But we'll continue. Number 37, Win-Win, 2011, average rating of 82.0. First of all, this is a really good movie with some big-time performances by Paul Giamatti, Amy Ryan, and Alex Schaefer. But Win-Win is a winner in my book because it's set in my hometown, New Providence, New Jersey. This is Mitch Light. And was written and directed by one of New Providence's finest, Tom McCarthy. So I never heard of it. Shocking, I know, but it's a wrestling movie, more Greco-Roman wrestling. But it's got Jeffrey Tambor, it's got Paul Giamatti, it's got Alex Schaefer, it's got Amy Ryan. It's got a pretty good cast. I've never heard of this movie. But struggling, though not overly ambitious lawyer as a court-appointed attorney, and old man afflicted with, he gets court-appointed to an old man with dementia. Mike sees an opportunity to take things easy for a while by volunteering to become his legal guardian. I don't know, man. I've never heard of it. Number 36, The Color of Money, 1986, average rating of 82.05. There are billiards movies. There are better ones starring Paul Newman as Fast Eddie Felson. But seeing Newman revisit his iconic role from The Hustler is damn enjoyable, and his character being fully formed from that movie adds weight to this sort of sequel. Plus, there just aren't that many billiards movies anymore. We need more billiards movies. I don't know if we need more billiards movies, Rossi. I'm not too sure about that one. We'll move on to $1 Million Baby in 2004. This is number 35, average rating of 82.15. Clint Eastwood's Oscar-winning Pearl is my favorite boxing movie, according to Pugmire. It so perfectly captures the jaded mannerisms of a trainer and the solitary motivations that burnish a champion fighter, which is Hilary Swank in this movie. When her nickname is translated, the audience can't help but let its guard down. It's a boxing movie. I've, once again, haven't watched. I should have looked at this list a little bit more before I started this whole thing, but it's whatever. I'm learning about a lot of movies that I need to go watch. But $1 Million Baby, it's got 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a boxing movie with Hilary Swank. It's got Morgan Freeman, Clint Eastwood. I mean, what else do you need? What else do you need to go watch this movie? Honestly. Really, though. What else do you need? Number 34, The Boxer, 1997, average rating of 82.33, with the world's finest actor in the title role. This is a stripped-down story of a fighter returning to his Belfast neighborhood after years in jail. Danny Flynn wants to resume boxing. The IRA has other ideas. Daniel Day-Lewis prepared for 2 years for the fight scenes. It shows. Bonus, no music video masquerading as a training montage. So this seems like a boxing movie, but except without any of the boxing cliches that you kind of see in boxing movies, you know. But it's a sports drama by Irish director Jim Sheridan, starring Daniel Day-Lewis and Emily Watson. Film centers around the life of boxer and former professional IRA volunteer Danny Flynn, played by Day-Lewis, who is trying to go straight after his release from prison. So there you go. If you're interested in it, there you go. Number 33, Rocky II, 1979, average rating of 83.1. Rocky II, the first of the series to be directed by Sylvester Stallone, has some rather profound layers to it. The culture of fame and sudden wealth, how it can chew you up and spit you out in an instant, being one of the more significant ones. Also, Rocky wins in this one. So, of course, this is where Rocky 1 was huge. This is where Rocky really took off. This movie was pretty great. It was the rematch between between Apollo and Rocky. It was a big movie. It's a good movie as well. If you haven't seen any of the Rocky movies, you should go watch them. My personal favorite's 4, as I discussed before. 3 is pretty fun. 1 and 2 are on the serious side, and so here's how you break it down. 1 is super serious, super slow, because it was made in the early 70s or something like that, or 75 or something like that, and it's just super slow. It's more dramatic and stuff like that. Rocky 2 is great, fantastic. Rocky 3 is a little bit more campy. Rocky 4 is just all out campy, and Rocky 5 is bad. And then Balboa is okay, in my opinion. Number 32, Dear Basketball, 2017, average rating of 84. So this is the movie where Kobe Bryant directed and wrote, because this was a letter he wrote. So people were shocked when Kobe Bryant walked on stage to accept an Academy Award for Best Animated Short in 2017. He retired less than a year earlier. Now he's accepting an Oscar. Beautiful short, animated in pencil and watercolors and flawlessly narrated by Bryant. Captured his love for the game he had dedicated his entire life to. So people didn't know about it, and it's one of the first things I watched after his death, and that was a poor move on my part, because Waterworks started, because it is very moving on its own, and then when you add in the tragedy that happened in late January, it's even worse. It hits you hard. Number 30, this is tied. 30 is tied. You have The Natural, 1984, average rating of 84.006. So this goes into Roy Hobbs, a darker, more textured character. This is in the book. This guy's talking about the books. But one of the strengths of the movie is Randy Newman's score, complete with the haunting hero's theme, which is perfectly attuned to Bill Dung's Roman tale. This was released in an era of gauzy sports flicks in a 5-year span between 1984 and 89. Natural, Hoosiers, Field of Dreams all came out. Hollywood was banking on sports nostalgia, and it paid off. And then the other number 30 is The Karate Kid, 1984, average rating of 84.06. The best movie ever made, don't at me, according to Mark Cavally. Karate Kid had all the characters, Miyagi, Daniel-san, Johnny, Kreese, the sayings, wax on, wax off, get him a body bag, sweep the leg, dramatic finish, all intertwined in the most underappreciated part of the film, the unique and heartwarming relationship between two very different but same individuals who filled a void in each other's lives. So this is The Karate Kid. Can't recommend The Karate Kid enough. And that is it. That is 39 through 30. Had a tie for 30 there. Karate Kid's a fantastic movie. So if you like this podcast, like, rate, subscribe, wherever you get your podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Strickland_Josh. And I guess I'll see you all on Thursday, and we'll talk about more non-sports topics, I guess. Who knows? Why not? See y'all then.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.